Yeah, but anyways, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I've I've begun doing some smiling and laughing training, and it actually works very well to generate.
It certainly does. Laughter is really, really good at moving the things around in the area that you've experienced anxiety so as to help break it up. That is exactly the right kind of activities to do. You can do it with breathing or you can do it with laughter. I like both.
I know that.
And so, working with the breathing, that the Buddha was really big on it, but for some reason, the whole idea of meditation has lost its deep breathing qualities to where in India the yoga is normally done with a lot of good deep breathing. India also has laughing clubs where people go to the group together and they spend 25, 30 minutes laughing. And it goes from forced to exhilarating to, oh my goodness, this is too much, and then back into wow, and back and forth like that. But laughter is really a good medicine. And part of it is that it shakes up that part of the body, realigns things, moves some things around, breaks up blockages in the breathing and the bloodstreams and all kinds of stuff. So it's got a lot of good advantage. But normally we get really sedentary, and especially if there's this any anxiety, you see, because basically down in the bottom and the basement of anxiety is fear. But fear itself may be expressed in other places. Sometimes people raise their shoulders in fear. Um, a great loss also will have a quality or a component of fear. And that basic fear that we're talking about actually is the deepest level of the survival instinct. Every animal throughout all of time for the past at least 300 million years or so has had a survival mechanism that kept them alive, at least temporarily. They all didn't just die before anything happened, that there was something in there that tried to keep them alive. And one of the qualities of that keeping an animal alive is now deeply buried into our own DNA. And that is that survival mechanism. And the survival mechanism's main way of communicating is with the word, or not with the word, but through the idea or the concept of fear. Basically, what it is it's a chemical let go. They the brain does this with the pineal or the pituitary glands, and down goes the message to the adrenaline gland, and out comes the cortisol on this side, and out comes the adrenaline on this side. And now we've got all of this stuff in the body that we would label as anxiety because we can feel it as that kind of stress or that kind of pressure that we're putting on ourselves. And in fact, if we had really excellent dynamic blood pressure systems, which we don't have, but momentary blood pressure spikes would be there.
Mm.
And so the deep breathing will help with that to start regulating and giving the body enough oxygen, etc. And so the Buddha was really big on pranayama or anapana. If you think about it, the word pranayama and the word anapana is actually the same word, just one's in one language and one's in the other, and then you reverse them. So prana is anapana. Okay, so
Yeah.
but it's the word, it's the same thing. And it does have the quality of doing yogic breathing, yogic exercises, taking deep breaths, and in your case, breathe right into that area that you can feel as the anxiety with the intention of the lion of Let's let this stuff go. Let's break it up. Let's put it on its way into the blood system. While I'm breathing deeply, I'm going to let the oxygen and all of the carbon dioxide and all the little tiny amino acids that have just gotten broken up get the hell out. And so that's the way that the lion can do it. And it's done with breathing. Or you can do it with laughter. Laughter sometimes is even better medicine. And you see that anxiety and say, hey, man, you're not going to bother me anymore. I'm the champion now. And by doing that, you also take that deep breath with that deep laughter. And there it goes. That anxiety ain't near what it was just an instant ago. Because there is these bodily components that are based in this feeling. Now, the whole point of what we just did is that we changed it from a dissatisfaction of, oh, poor me, I've still got anxiety, into let's take some deep breaths. Let's have some laughter. Let's have some joy in this. Let's take care of this situation. Let's break that stuff up and let go of it so I can become really satisfied. And so that's the practice of doing it. And that's why Anapanasati is such a complete practice, including all of the yogic breathings and all of that kind of stuff built right into it. Because it's got a reason or a person. It's got a real purpose to it. It really will be beneficial to your health. And you would be much healthier if you were happy for the next 60 years. Than if you were full of anxiety for the next 60 years. Your choice.
Yeah, I think it would probably be full of anxiety in the next 30 years.
No, it doesn't have to be. Every time you see that anxiety, you can say, I can let this go right now. Yeah, and start breaking up the habit.
I wouldn't survive for 60 years. All the stress would put me in the 6 feet under.
You could if you were happy. If you were happy and satisfied, you could last another 60 years.
That's something else.
Monks are known to live really long lives. I've known several that have done more than 100.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that.
So again, the choice is yours. There's a very good article, by the way, in the Lion's Roar. I don't know how old it is, but it's on Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, and the talk is about karma. The choice is yours. Now, you've known about the laws of karma for a long time, but here's a way that we can look at this law of karma that's really relevant. And that is that this anxiety is the result of action. The karma vipaka, the phala, karma phala, is the fruit of your actions in the past. And if your actions in the past were laden with anxiety, then your actions or non-actions in the moment can still be reflected with this anxiety. But you do not have to keep with that. You can start planting new seeds. You can do new things. You can change. You are not bound by your old karma. That's the real message of the Buddha is that you can become free from your karma. The choice is yours, or you can still keep staying in the karma.
Karma only dictates what is happening right now.
No, there is the result of the action, and the result determines the value. So an action for every, just like the second law of Newton, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction is a law of nature. The law of karma is a little bit different than that. It says every good action will have a good result and every bad action will have a bad result. Right? It's the result of the action that we're talking about now that is the anxiety that you experience in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And what you do, whether it's even subliminal or not, in other words, whether you know it deeply the way that you're beginning to see it, now that you see it, you'll be looking at it from now on because you know what to look for. A lot of people don't know it. They feel it and they behave according to it, and it drives their lives because they're not aware of it. That's the karma. You can see that cycle. This is also the cycle of samsara, and it keeps that anxiety rolling. But you can put a choice in there. You can stop it. It may take a few times to stop it, but every time you stop it, that's changing its momentum. And then it'll come up again and you can stop it again. Start to change so its momentum begins to decline because you put a stop to it from time to time. Every time that you become aware of it, that's the time to put a stop to it.
Remember, always remember.
Exactly correct. To remember in this case to look for the anxiety. How's the anxiety right now? Is this a good time to take a really good deep breath? The answer is certainly.
It always is.
It always is. So to remember to take those good long deep breaths, or and also in our case to remember to have a good laugh. Whenever that anxiety comes, you can just have a really out loud belly laugh. I see that anxiety again. There it is. But it's not the boss anymore. So yes, that's exactly the way to do it. You got it. And congratulations for being able to see this anxiety, because this is really the main thing that people have to wake up to. That in fact it's the anxiety that you're seeing that it'll change and turn in a flavor so that you recognize that this anxiety actually flavors every relationship that you have with every other human being and animal on the planet.
Yeah.
So that now that you don't have so much anxiety, you can become friends with them. You're not competitors anymore.
I'm beginning to see the well of possibilities. Not seeing anxiety is like kind of like not seeing the snake in the grass.
Exactly.
If I don't see it, I can't do something about it. I don't know where it is. I don't know it's there, but it can strangle me at any moment.
If you step on it, it'll bite you.
Yeah.
But guess what? There's a lot of situations like that. I tend to use the snake in the grass is perfect. But there's another one, and that is a cow pie. Don't step in the cow pie.
What?
Keep quiet.
Huh?
Keep quiet.
I say keep quiet.
Yeah. She's laughing at the cow pie. Don't step in the cow pies of life.
Cow pies? What is? What's that?
You know what a cow is?
Yeah.
Yeah, a cow.
Shit pile.
Depends upon which neighbor you're right. Depends upon which neighborhood it is, but there's a whole lot, sometimes more cow pies than there are snakes. But sometimes they're just as disgusting.
I can see that.
All right. So every time anxiety arises, you can see that as a cow pie, in the sense of you either step in it or you step around it. How do you step around it? was with that deep breath or that belly laugh or that breaking up of that anxiety with the idea or the thought, I can do this. This anxiety is not my future. I'm going to enjoy at least this present moment because I see you. That's that call. I see you, Mr. Anxiety. And this is really the whole point of the practice of Anapanasati, was that beginning of start watching the breath. But now we're going to put that breath to good use. So first it was just a wandering mind, but now you're recognizing that sometimes your mind wanders into anxiety because it's been there before. It's a familiar ground. So every time that the body gets into a state of anxiety and you see it, you're going to take a deep breath and you're going to become its champion, not its slave.
I understand that it's being the slave is so easy, and that's probably what have driven me all my life.
All your life, exactly. Well, guess what? You're like everybody else around. That's the normal state that humans are in. It's not like I've got some kind of magical intuition and look at it and know everybody I see does that.
Yeah, but it's kind of weird. Now that I better see how feelings and emotions affects our actions. When I talk to people, speak, ask if they are how they are and if they are feeling well, or they kind of the answer is never. If I ask a colleague that, are you anxious about this? No. But their actions betray it. All their actions are
But they
dictated
won't
by...
admit it, because if they admit it to you, they will have to admit it to themselves, and they don't want to admit, even to themselves, that their life is driven by anxiety. It's driven by a need to get something done.
And it mirrors myself so very well earlier. What I was always like.
Well, now you know what to do about it, but we can also start to discuss a little bit more about the underlying qualities of where that stuff comes from. Because that need to get something done eventually works its way into a relationship with another person, so that we get into a competitive mode. In other words, now we understand what or who the cause of my anxiety is. Because before, when we experience anxiety, we don't really know what the cause of it is, and so we start to worry and futz with things, trying to figure out what needs to be done so that I can get out of this state of anxiety. But if we can identify another person as, oh, they're the cause of my anxiety, now we can deal with a person, but we almost always deal with it ignorantly. And so what do? We go into competition, because it's back to that self-preservation instinct, and all of this stuff is based in fear. By the way, Willie is calling. Is it okay with you if I let him in on the call? We're not going to change anything from what we're talking about. He'll just join in.
No problem. Hello.
Okay, so here. Willie hasn't shown up on this screen yet.
Oh, I can't hear you.
I don't either see or hear Willie. And in fact, it looks like he's gone away.
I can see him here.
Yes, he left. Okay. So never mind. He wanted to talk about something special, so not an issue. He'll call later. A lot of friends.
He will probably call
So,
back.
all right. So we were talking about the three-way relationship between anxiety and conceit. And the conceit that I'm talking about is almost always demonstrated as competition with another. That we get into competition with people because we think that they're the source of this anxiety that we have. In other words, it's their fault. This is one of the ways that people get into the sense of being a victim, is by blaming how I feel on someone else. How I feel is somebody else's fault. So once we begin to take over this quality of the anxiety is something that I'm in the habit of generating whenever things happen, but it's not what happened that caused the anxiety. The anxiety is just waiting there, looking for an opportunity to bust out.
Yeah,
but now you're beginning to see it, and that's the best part. The best part is because if you can see it, then you can recognize that you own it. Here's Willie calling again. Let's see if he's coming. Okay. So, continuing along, the base then of all of these feelings that manifest themselves into the body actually are what we call the higher fetters. They're higher because they're, let us say, more difficult to deal with than mere anger. Anger is a surface level thing, but deep under there is anxiety, and even under that is fear. And if we can start dealing with that anxiety, we'll begin to also see that fear underneath and that propensity for anger. And that anger is almost always rooted in competition. In other words, the angry one, he's ready to compete in some way or another at a very intense level. So all of these things are interrelated together. And that the source of this anxiety is through the mechanism of fear, and that fear is let us call it a chemical, electrical, biological mechanism. And when I say mechanism, I'm talking about it in one respect, very primitive. The kind of stuff that can be put on any electronic chip can figure out this stuff. All right. And so the brain is actually in that way very simple. So when there is fear, the fear that's registered in the mind has bodily components because of the pineal and the pituitary glands start secreting stuff that goes directly to the adrenal. And so that was from Willie again. He's waiting for the call to be over. Let me go.
No, it looks like when I joined, it said no one else was on.
Oh.
Try to invite him.
Darn, I don't know. Oh, I see what it is. Let's go down to that. That'll do it. Okay. So we were talking about, actually, these things are the higher fetters that we normally think of as ill will and lust.
Yes, here you are.
Also, hey guys, hello again. I had to restart Skype.
Hello, Willie.
Hello. Yeah,
Nice to see you.
it's nice to see you too. Yeah.
All right, so we're still in a recorded call. So if you don't mind, Willie, you can just sort of listen in on what's going on.
Certainly.
Okay. We're actually really talking about the fetters, and the way that they operate together is quite interesting. That these fetters that the Buddha discussed is exactly what's happening within the mind and body. And so he's nailed it. I mean, he studied what was going on and what happens within the mind of the Buddha. He recognized happens to everybody. This is all familiar stuff with everybody. Meanwhile, Ronny has come fully into understanding the feelings of and beginning to understand the source of and the results of anxiety. And so that's what we're in the middle of. And so in that regard, what we're looking at is we're looking at how anxiety fits in on the scale of the higher fetters, or in fact, all of the fetters. So the fourth fetter is anger, because anger should be able to be fairly easily seen. When we're angry, we should be able to see that we're angry. And so knowing that being angry actually makes me look ugly, makes me old, makes me nobody wants to be around an angry person. Nobody believes what somebody says when they're angry. And so we look stupid, we smell bad, we look bad. Nobody wants to be seen as angry. And also, when one is angry, they're the ones who's suffering the most. Being angry is a real shithole. Nobody likes it at all. But funny thing that when people are angry, they'll deny it. No, I'm not angry. Instead of taking on that opportunity. So anger is fairly easy to see, but the subtlety of anxiety is a little bit deeper. And that's why it's one of the higher fetters, is because people can have anxiety and not show any signs at all. But when somebody's angry, almost always there will be outward signs of it. Raised voice, raised pitch, intense looking, all kinds of small gestures that are given long before they ball up their fist.
Yeah.
But anger can be seen. And so that would be why it would be listed as number 5 of the lower fetters, because it's so clearly obvious. But then we can begin to say, oh, just above that level is the source of the anger is fear. But the source of anxiety is also fear. And the source of our competition and our lack of being able to get along with other people, in fact, what we really are looking at is our tribal instincts. That we become tribal in the sense of we are good people and you are not. I'm right and you're not. The way I see it is this way. So we become attached to views, we attach to racism, we attach to all kinds of things that make us in a state of competition, all because we think that anxiety comes from somewhere else outside of us. We're looking to blame how we feel. And so here comes those ugly little politicians along trying to make everybody full of fear and full of anxiety to get them to vote for you. while you ignore the real problem. The real problem is how the money is managed, but the issue is, oh no, it's that racism. It's them bad people who just came into the country. We got to get rid of them, but don't let no more in. So they're actually appealing to then that the fear that they're creating, the anxiety that it produces, in order to get people to vote for things because they're in competition with them, when there is in fact no need for the competition.
Right.
And so this is how the mind works at that level. And you can see, in fact, that now we've got 4 higher fetters in play all at the same time. Well, not all at the same time, but let us say in chorus with each other, harmonizing. We have that basic fear. And that basic fear, by the way, is a self-preservation mechanism. So what that means is that basic fear is actually the fear of death.
Mm.
And I mean, why have any anxiety at all? If you were completely impervious, if you were completely the champion, but you know something? There was an emperor who was so big of an emperor in China that the only enemy he had left was death. And he wound up killing himself because of the concoctions and elixirs he was taking was mixed with mercury.
The immortality elixir. Oh my God. Yes.
Well, all elixirs of mortality is all about the magic of trying to survive because of that fear of death. We don't want to die. Mm-hmm. And that fear of death then is the bottom line. This is in the Pali, is called the Rupa Raga and Arupa Raga. How in the world are we going to let go of the physical world, including the body? The answer is you've got a choice about that too. Just like you have a choice about breathing into the anxiety, the choice is, are you going to die happily or are you going to die by accident?
Wait, so before, like right when you said the answer is, like Skype just cut out on cue. And so like 5 seconds later, I just heard something died by accident. What was the answer? Yeah, sorry.
Okay. The answer is that we are afraid of death, and everyone has a choice about how we're going to die.
Oh, yeah.
We're either going to be able to die happily or we're going to die by accident.
Right. Right.
Now, what do I mean dying by accident? Well, it's so long as the medical profession and everyone is there trying to keep the individual alive and she finally dies anyway, obviously it was an accident because look how hard they tried to keep her alive. And so everybody almost, in fact, in many places throughout Europe and even the United States, it's by law. The only way for someone to die is by accident.
Mm.
They cannot euthanize. They cannot suicide. They cannot jump off a cliff. That's just such a big no-no. They've got to stay in suffering. All right. Mm. But the question is, why suffer for a little while if you're ready to go? If you're satisfied with your life, then whose life is it anyway?
Mm.
And so this is the idea that we start to play with, to recognize, wait a minute, if I've got a choice on how I feel when I die, then that's the same thing as conquering death. Now, a lot of people have that idea of conquering death means conquering death itself, or let's have everlasting life. Let's have a soul to be reborn in heaven. Let's reincarnate, or let's get reborn, or maybe we can get Frankenstein together and stitched up, put back together, and then some electric charge is going to bring me back to life. This is what it's all about, is that self-preservation mechanism of me, 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 me. And so long as that's your ultimate down at the bottom source of your existence, there will always be fear and anxiety. So the way to actually get rid of the anxiety at its deepest level is to become fearless. And that fearlessness is actually something that is a skill to be learned. This is one of the reasons why the Buddha would send monks over to the charnel ground to go spend the 10 days with a dead corpse, watch it rot, with the idea this too is going to happen to me. There's nothing that can be done about it. I will too die. That's actually part of the funeral chants.
I see.
That the monks say at funerals. I've forgotten it, but the translation is everything that lives dies. Whatever is alive now will die. I too shall die. Of this I have no doubt. Now, that's pretty heavy duty. That's the stuff that they do at a Buddhist funeral, especially for a monk. That I too shall die. Of this I have no doubt. And yet all this fear and anxiety that has to do around death is because of this self-preservation instinct, whose only method of communication is through fear. So when we start to think about fear or thinking about death, these fearful thoughts will come up. And they can come up in the form of anxiety.
Everything that arises will pass.
Everything that arises will pass away. I too shall die. In fact, I just did. Oops, there it goes again. So everything becomes temporary, and with that, and we recognize number one, you've got no choice. You're going to die. The choice is different than that. The choice is you do have a choice about how you're going to die. Are you going to die by happiness or are you going to die by accident? Now, there's several stories that I like to tell on this issue. One of them, Ronnie, is that imagine that the grandmother is laying there in the hospital and everybody comes on Sunday to see Granny. And there's the grandchildren and the adults and everybody's there. And everybody's saying, we're praying for you, Granny. Hang in there. We know you can make it. And everybody and Granny's saying, okay, like that. And then they go home and then Granny's dead on Monday. And then everybody's full of grief. Oh, poor Granny, she didn't make it. My prayers didn't work. Or worse still, oh, I should have said goodbye yesterday because she looked like she was out. But we don't let that happen in our culture. We cannot say goodbye. And yet almost everyone, they say, knows when death is coming. You're going to know when you're dead or soon to die, especially if you just got shot. Or that you just got pushed off a very, very high-story building, and here you're coming to the ground. Are you going to enjoy the view? It's the last one you'll ever have. Or are you going to panic? Are you going to panic at that point of accident? Or are you going to prepare well for it so that when it comes, you can enjoy it? To be there for it. Once you come to the conclusion that I know that I'm going to die and that I'm going to be well prepared for it and that I can handle it just fine, just like any other natural, normal, noble lion of a human being would do, I'm going to die happily. This is exactly the way that it happened with several very, very well-known dudes, including Socrates. I really love his story. He was having so much fun after drinking the hemlock that the guard had to give him an extra dose because normally it only took one, but he had to take 2 cups. And the last thing that he started to do was Vipassana out loud. Oh, my legs are beginning to go numb. Oh, I'm feeling this and that happening in the body. And he was very much alert to what was going on. He was very much there in the state of intimacy when all of his students were there. In fact, earlier, one of the students had gotten kicked out because he started to cry.
Mm.
And Socrates didn't want that in his place. He's going to go out with a bang, not a whip. And so these are the kind of examples that we know that we're strong enough mentally, that we can do that kind of thing. And if we can go out well, then we can manage everything else well.
Mm.
And so you become kind of fierce. I mean, after all, if you're no longer afeared of death, then what is there that's worth being afraid of?
Mm-hmm.
Say, oh, I'd be afraid of becoming destitute. Okay, now imagine that you're destitute. Now your choice is, are you going to live destitute or die? Which one would you choose? You would choose to live destitute rather than die. That's the whole point of it. So why worry about So if death the issue and you're not worried about dying anymore, then there is nothing worth worrying about anymore. The source of the fear is gone because the death is the source of the fear. Once death is no longer an enemy, then I can make friends with almost anything.
Mm. Right. Right.
Can make friends with anything. If I can make friends with my own death. And like I said, this is one of the things that is very deeply wrapped up in Buddhism. Many temples throughout Thailand will have a whole lot of real skeletons.
Mm.
Many examples of one of them. One of my favorites is up in the Northeast where they had a lot of water buffalo. The water buffalo came really sacred because the whole area depended upon it. And so there's a big temple up there that's completely lined with the head and the horns of water buffalo. Hundreds of them. It was the collection point to take the water buffalo after it died. There's another one in Chiang Rai. The whole temple is a temple of gargoyles and skeletons and bad dudes and hell and all kinds of stuff like that. Even at Wat Suan Mok, there are 3 skeletons hung up on the wall. A man, a woman, and a child. So
wow.
it can happen anytime.
Wow.
So getting more intimate with death is a very important thing to learn. And yet in our societies, in Northern Europe and in the US, everything has pushed death so far away from most people that a person can die and no one does anything other than the professionals. And the professionals are making a lot of money. Why? Because everybody else doesn't want to deal with it. But in the old days, there were no professionals. People had to deal with everybody's body. That when your mate died, you had to take a shovel. It was your job. And that really kept people in touch in the old days with death. So now as we've removed ourselves from it, placed a great big set of religious beliefs in between to try to avoid death, to avoid thinking about it, then that means that our society is even more uptight, more fearful, more anxiety than we would have been as human beings several hundred years ago.
I see.
Now, have you ever heard the old joke about there are no atheists in foxholes?
No atheists is where?
No atheists in foxholes. World War I had foxholes in trenches.
Gotcha.
Okay? No atheists in the trenches. Why is that, they say? is because in that kind of face of death, everybody wants to be a Christian. Everybody wants to get help. Everybody wants out of that situation because they're staring death in its face. But there's a joke answer to that. And the joke is there is no atheists in foxholes because they weren't patriotic enough to join the army. They're all sitting at home. They didn't go to the army. They're not in the foxholes. Only Christians are stupid enough to do that. But then the other side of the joke is they're in normal traditional funerals throughout the Western world. There are no Christians at funerals.
Oh.
Why do I say no Christians at funerals? Because look at a funeral. Everybody is morbid. Everybody is sad. I mean, New Orleans, at least they've got a dance band, but they're playing slow, ugly music.
Mm.
All of our masses and all of our dirges and all of our dedications to the dead is always really sad music. But the whole base about Christianity was the good news of the gospel. Hey, man, when you die, you're going to go to heaven. Whippy! Let's give Uncle Bob a good send-off. Wow, Uncle Bob, you made it into heaven. Aren't we happy? We're coming next. I'm coming too.
Yeah, that makes sense, actually.
Right. That's the Christian view of heaven. So why are everybody that's there saying they're Christian so sad? That makes no sense.
Oh, we got to have that.
That's so good.
Because everyone deep down has that fear and the sense of death. And it doesn't matter what the preacher says. At that point in time, when you're looking at that corpse laying in front of you, everything that the teacher says rings hollow. But I can't say that. I can't even admit it. But a dead corpse right in front of you is the best thing I know of to show you that you're going to die.
Mm.
And nobody knows anything about what death beyond death is. All we know is that there is nothing about physics in the physical world that's going to assist our belief systems and our conjectures and our ideas about the other side or afterlife things.
Mm.
That our physical world, the physical world we live in, has electrons and neutrons and protons, and it's got all of this stuff massed together in certain kind of combinations with molecules that get really complex, wind up being amino acids in one case, and then recombined, and now they're part of DNA. And all of that stuff rots. DNA, amino acids, basic molecules, everything is temporary.
Mm.
So when you die, you're going to die. And that's the best you can count on. The question is not what happens after death. The question happens, what happens before your death? Even the Buddhists who were clinging to those kind of beliefs saying, oh, never mind how you've lived your whole life. If you can have a charming one moment at the point of death, then you're going to have a marvelous lifetime after that. So even for the Buddhist at that level, that point of death is a moment of importance, of great importance. And if you know that you can handle that point in time very well now, that gives you everything you need to know that you can live your life before that point in time happens at a very high-class, noble level. This is why the Buddha was so big on fearlessness in death. That's also, by the way, why martial artists such as Musashi, and in Bangkok, there's an area of Bangkok. I've been on that area only a couple of times on a boat because the place doesn't have a road between them. It's a klong, and on this side of the klong is a dojo with all of this boxing equipment, and on the other side is a temple. But then the boat goes a little further, and then the next thing on this side is a temple, and on that side is a dojo. And you wind up being temple and dojo right down this whole area of Bangkok. That's heavily shaded and treed, and it's really impossible to see where this is on the satellite. So I'd have to go back there on the boat again. It's been a long time. But the point that I'm making is that what is a Muay Thai fighter in Bangkok going to do upon retirement?
Mm.
Well, look at the skills that he's got. He's fearless in the face of an opponent. He has also got mindfulness skills up the kazoo. Why? Because if he's not watching what's going on, he's going to get his face hit.
Mm.
And so these Muay Thai boxers have many of the skills that are needed to become a good monk. And so they've got a built-in system. That's why in that area of Bangkok, so many monks have so many tattoos. It's because they got the tattoos when they were Muay Thai. It's funny like that because even in Thailand, and this is crazy, I know, but even retired mafia will choose to become monks.
Wow.
That's the way out. You walk in this door in this temple, and the next thing you know, you're 30 miles away because you got your head shaved, everything is different. You got your robe and your bowl, and you got your bare feet, and off you go.
Wow.
And so, this whole quality about being a lion is very, very much a part of that quality about being a Buddha. And the quality of the lion is also this quality of fearlessness in the face of death. Because if we can become free from the fear of death, then what is there left? So this is the ultimate way of dealing with anxiety, Ronnie, but you're making a very, very excellent start at it right now. Because we have to see that anxiety, but now you can see that anxiety, how deeply related to everything it is.
Yeah.
But your job right now is to work with that anxiety. Your job right now is to stay on it. That means mindfulness. Now you really need that skill of mindfulness to remember to watch for that anxiety, because if it comes up and you're not aware of it, it's going to run your life.
Mm.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
But don't be dissatisfied with it, because it's part of your nature. That the quality of how you deal with the anxiety is everything. Because as you said before, right in the beginning, that is when you deal with it in the sense of, I don't like this anxiety now that I'm taking a look, I don't like this stuff at all. It's going to build.
Right.
It's going to get into that loop of more anxiety, more dissatisfaction, more anxiety. But if you make that attitude change, and that attitude is, I can do this, I can take care of it. No matter how obstructed the mind gets with anxiety, I can come out of that anxiety, I can take a deep breath, I can be free of it, free from that hindrance. Even if the feelings, or even if the bodily sensations of the anxiety are still there, the way you feel about it has massively changed.
But I gotta pay attention because it wants its job back.
It will come up every opportunity.
Yeah. So guys, yeah, I think this might be a good stopping point for me because it's like 3:20 like in New York City now, and I gotta catch some shut eye after this week. I will join next time. Yes.
All right. Well, I think that we've about come to a conclusion on this. Do you have any questions, Ronnie?
No, I don't see any need to drone on and on. I think I have plenty of stuff to digest.
You got the idea. We've done some important things today. We've talked about fetter number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9. We've actually covered quite a lot.
A lot to digest.
Excellent. Well, the thing to do, the thing to count on is to start watching that anxiety, knowing that fear is under there, and knowing that the fear of death is the reason for the rationale for the fear. But that will be conceptual, but pretty soon you'll see it. Right now I'm planning a concept, but it's only a map. Pretty soon you'll be able to see the sequence of events and things, how they happen in the mind.
I'm working myself up in the chain of origination.
Did you say
dependent origination?
Oh, yes, exactly. That's what we're talking about.
The more I can, the more I can change my focus backwards or upwards, the better I will see the real cause.
Excellent. You're making excellent progress, Ronny.
Zooming
right along.
I have at least some good idea I will practice with. So thanks for the chat.
Great. Okay, we'll see you soon.
See you next time. You too.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye, Willie.
Yeah, see y'all next time. Yeah, bye.